Well, it's a good question. Has Kirby Smart done a good job this year? We're coming close to the end of the season, and a lot of the season really is left to be played. That will determine that answer. When you think about the Missouri game, obviously probably playing Vanderbilt in a bowl game, those three games will determine just how poorly people think about Kirby's job this year. But it's very nuanced again. I understand that there's a narrative out there that this has not been a good season for Georgia. It's not been one of their good seasons under Kirby. But if they finish the season with a top 10 year and a New Year's Six Day bowl win, that's a successful season. As disheveled as it was at times, the nuance here has been the quarterback spot, and I'll lay it out right now again for everyone so that we can get back to sanity here about judging Georgia. JT Daniels was not prepared to play against Arkansas, so they had to go with one of the two quarterbacks, Stetson Bennett or Dwan Mathis. They go with Dwan Mathis, doesn't work out. Stetson comes into the game. They go from down 3 at the half to winning the game by 27. Not all on the offense, but a lot on the offense. They start Stetson the next week. Solid performance, generally speaking, for Georgia against Auburn, blowout win. Solid performance for Stetson against Tennessee, blowout win. Then you go to Alabama, and you really play pretty well, certainly as a group, against the Tide. The defense played pretty well most of the night. The offense, was spottier for sure. They lose the game to Alabama, a game that they were winning in the third quarter, and you have to say, well, is it time to make a change at quarterback? Do you go back to Dwan Mathis? Is JT Daniels ready? So the confusion here was that from the start, JT had been what's called cleared for the Auburn game. So there were people inside the program, as soon as Kirby said that, he said it at noon on a Monday. They thought, well, okay, Daniels is going to start from here on out. But there were two things that happened at once, which was that, they were okay with the way that Stetson played. And he did play pretty well, frankly, against Arkansas. And then Daniels really wasn't where he wanted to be. Being cleared and playing, those aren't the same thing at all. I mean, they're just not. So then you get to so you keep going through the season. JT, according to people inside the program, for me, they were worried about the knee still. They weren't convinced that he was completely back to where he wanted to go. And some people thought he's not as good as people were wanting to think that he is. Beat Kentucky, but in the Kentucky game, it was evident they've got problems in the passing game. This isn't just some, people aren't making this up. This is a problem. So they win that game 14-3, basically running it like crazy. But the passing was an adventure that entire game. Then you get a week off before Jacksonville, and that's where there was no coming back from that for the quarterbacks who had played before, because to not even complete a third of your passes or whatever it was bad quarterback play from the moment that Stetson got hurt when Georgia got up 14-0 to the end of that game. There was just no good. It was bad, and that's when I think Kirby and them knew for sure we've got to make a change. Either JT's not ready or he is, but he's got to get a look. And they come in a week off after Florida and play Mississippi State and throw for 400 yards. Now, George Pickens didn't play against Florida. Marcus Roseman St. John, or I keep pronouncing that wrong, but he goes out in the middle of that game, and you start your arsenal is limited. But even if they were playing well, the quarterbacks were playing so bad. So you get in there. George Pickens is back for the Mississippi State game. That makes a big difference. And you're playing with JT Daniels. So the microcosm of all this is what happened during all of that. And people will say, well, he just should have gone with JT from the Auburn game on. I don't, you know, JT wasn't ready to play. So in the grand scheme of things, when you take a look at this season for Kirby Smart, I think a lot of this is what's gone on here so far. Now, if they lose to Missouri, it's a different situation. But a lot of what's happening here is that you're watching Georgia go from an offense that it had in 17, 18, and 19, realizing in 17 and 18 that they needed to change, and now going through the change in 20. You go out and you recruit Dwan Mathis. You try to develop him. It doesn't work out. He transfers. You go out and get a new offensive coordinator from 19 to 20. You go out and you sign a dual threat quarterback in Brock Vandegrift. You go out and get Carson Beck, who is much more fleet of foot than Jake Fromm, more athletic. What's happening right now is people are watching as Georgia evolves, and they don't like what they're watching because it's a struggle. But the evolution has begun, and this offense has become more explosive the last few weeks. Would it have been that way with James Coley as the quarterback? Would it have been that way with Jake Fromm? I don't know the answer to that. But you're also seeing that they're going out and getting explosive playmakers at receiver. Again, George Pickens, certainly Smith. Don't forget Burton. And then, you've got Dominique has been out. Not Dominique, excuse me. Yeah, Dominique Blaylock has been out the whole season. All four of those guys, plus nevertheless, Kyrus Jackson and Rosemy, those guys are all going to be back next year. You can't just turn a program's offensive approach around in about a season. It's hard to do that. And so you're watching now as it slowly has changed, and you're going into this 21 season saying, they look a little different than they have in the past. Well, yeah, they do, because they have a vertical passing game. And that's something that was rare under Jake Fromm. You saw that with Jacob. It was rare under Jake Fromm. And that's the part that I think people are going to have to judge Kirby on, is moving forward. What are they doing after they switch quarterbacks and a guy who's playing who's a former five-star guy? Because they have another five-star guy in the queue, and they could have yet another one in the 22 class. We don't know yet. So when you say, has Kirby done a good job this year? It's not been his best coaching performance. And I'm not going to talk about coronavirus and stuff like that. That's certainly been a challenge. But it's really come down to, you didn't have Newman, who was healthy. He opts out. You don't have the five-star kid who's transferred in healthy. So you go from a guy you were certain was going to start to a guy that you thought you could bring along as your starter, as his backup through the season. They're not available. And you wind up going with a guy who has done all he can do for Georgia in Stetson Bennett. Guy who has bled and won them big games. You don't think that Auburn game was a big game? It was. So they have moved forward, though, with a vertical passing game. And it has really opened people's eyes. And if you can take this and move it forward into 21, it will be worth all the pain in 20. Even if they get a top 10 season, it would be a real bad year, and you possibly could be a top 10 team. That's the part that's so crazy, is that's how high the threshold is for being good at Georgia. You have to be in the top 10 minimum. And even a top 10 season would be considered bad. That's really saying something. Think about that. Check out this video of Brock Vandegrift. You're seeing it right over my right shoulder there. He's a five-star kid. It's a playlist you can watch. I don't cut just highlights, though. We leave the bad plays in there, too, so you can see what's really going on with this kid. He's an exceptional athlete, very good runner with the ball. Check it out. We'll see you over there.